After 3 nights sleeping rough in Paris, Jan is finally admitted to the reception centre opened by city authorities in November. The first step, an interview on his status with the help of a translator. After leaving Afghanistan, Jan passed through Iran, Turkey and Eastern Europe on his way to France. He's given clothes, toiletries and a card to access the centre.
Passport.
At 23, this young man's already had a tough life. He was held for 6 months in Hungary and faced systematic police controls.
They take your fingers print. They don't let you to go without fingers. So that's why we give the finger there.
And Jan knows that under the so-called Dublin Regulation, he can be sent back to Hungary, the first European country to take his prints. This scarf in Afghan colours has been with him since he left home.
Black when was the big war in our country, so bomb blast and before, and this is blood of people, and we hope it will become like this.
Jan hopes to build a life in France and pursue a career as a cricketer. But for now, the closest he comes to a match is on his phone.
You wait 1 minute when I call your name, okay?
Like Jan, 70% of the migrants housed here are subject to the Dublin Regulation. After 48 hours, they're assessed by police to determine if their asylum claim belongs in France and where they can be given accommodation.
Monsieur Ahmedi Danish.
As he awaits his interview, 18-year-old Danish, also from Afghanistan, is visibly worried. He tells us he was threatened by the Taliban. What's more, he's already had an asylum application turned down in Sweden.
Everyone is saying if my fingerprints comes out, they will send me back there and they will deport me to Afghanistan.
His prints are checked against an EU-wide database, which, sure enough, shows they were taken in Sweden.
You now have to explain to him he's going to undergo a Dublin procedure. This means France is asking Sweden to take charge of his case. This procedure states that it's the first country where his fingerprints were taken that has to handle his claim for asylum.
Danish is devastated. More than 22,000 asylum seekers in France are affected by the Dublin Regulation, 25% of the total in the country. And the numbers are increasing at the will of the Interior Ministry.
The frequency of so-called Dublin transfers has increased since the summer of 2016. This coincides with the moment the state allocated significant funds. It's been an ongoing dynamic ever since.
The authorities even require those affected to be placed under compulsory residence orders. It's a situation denounced by rights groups and NGOs. Last year, La CIMAD offered support and legal advice to some 3,200 asylum seekers.
Since the start of the year, a lot of Dublinized asylum seekers have been coming here. This is because the police prefecture has been increasing the number of transfers.
For campaigners, it's time to reconsider the Dublin Regulation.
The problem is the legitimacy of this procedure. It creates inequality among the European Union member states. If this procedure was effectively implemented, this would mean only border countries such as Spain, Italy or Greece would be in charge of asylum seekers. Northern countries would no longer have to deal with them.
Mohammed's from Sudan. Last year, he braved the journey through Libya and across the Mediterranean. He says his time in Italy before arriving in France was a nightmare.
Living in Italy was a very violent experience. I slept in the streets and we were beaten up by the Italian police. They forcibly took our fingerprints. They broke my finger.
It's a claim backed up by Amnesty International, which has denounced numerous cases of violence by the Italian police. But here in France, the welcome isn't always much warmer. Under a railway bridge next to the reception centre, city authorities have installed concrete blocks to stop migrants congregating, much to the annoyance of activists. Among those here, Ali from Afghanistan, who's taking his chances in France after Sweden rejected his asylum application.
If only the state could give us a chance to live a peaceful life here in France. Every time I have an appointment at the prefecture, I cannot sleep. I'm really stressed out.
Ali's been waiting for a reply from the authorities since November. In 2016, 1,300 people were transferred from France under the Dublin Regulation, compared to just over 500 the previous year.
For more on this, I'm now joined in the studio from Paris's Sciences Po University by Shoshana Fine. Hello, thank you very much for coming in. Now, do you think that it's time to change or perhaps even scrap the Dublin Regulation?
Absolutely. I think Dublin has always been very problematic. It puts all of the responsibility on the countries at the border of Europe because essentially, as was well indicated in the report, an asylum seeker going to Dublin has to ask for asylum in the first state in which he reaches, and obviously geographically it's all of the border states. So it's really showing a lack of solidarity among European countries, and I also think it's very problematic with respect to the asylum seeker in question, whether he has links in a particular country. It doesn't take into account their integration potential in a particular country. And, you know, that would also benefit the reception country if the asylum seeker in question integrates properly.
You mentioned the burden this places on southern countries, particularly Greece and Italy. Have they not, though, been getting more EU funds to help them deal with processing asylum seekers?
Yes, they have, but still not enough. And it still doesn't make sense to have a European policy of asylum that puts...
Apologies, sorry, we're having sound issues. We're hearing you in the studio. Carry on.
So essentially, it doesn't make sense to put all of the burden on these border countries, which, as we can see, are really having a difficult time in receiving these people in a respectable fashion. We've seen cases of torture and inhumane treatment. People are put in detention for very long periods. They're not getting their asylum applications processed. So the situation in these countries, in what's known as these hotspot centres that have been created, is very problematic and has been condemned time and time again by civil society groups.
Now, we heard in the report that France is sending more and more people away, out of the country. How come in 2016 the number increased so drastically?
Yeah, I mean, two things can explain that essentially. One is the creation of the hotspots in 2015 by the Commission, which really put a lot of effort onto these countries to get them to register people coming through. Before then, we could see some people being registered, some people not, because obviously these states don't want to take responsibility for these asylum seekers. So it was kind of in their interest not to register everyone. We can also see this happening in France, between France and the UK, by the way. And secondly, because in July 2016, the Ministry of Interior released an order to the various prefects saying that they need to impose Dublin in a systematic manner and increase the number of Dublin transfers.
Now, a few months ago, the camp in Calais, known as the Jungle, was dismantled and the French authorities sent migrants to various centres across France. What do you make of that? Can it be considered a success?
I mean, I certainly don't think it can be considered a success. Already many of these people that have been sent to these centres have left these centres. We've seen many people, because they didn't want to make an asylum claim in France to begin with. As I mentioned before, they have links to the UK. Maybe they have family there. Maybe they speak English, so that it will be easier for them to find work in these places. So we've actually got increasing numbers of people coming back to Calais. And we knew this was going to happen from day one, but really the destruction of the Jungle was more a kind of communication to the French public to say, look, we can control this situation, we can bring order to this situation.
But what is France to do when the UK won't let so many people in, no matter what links they have with their relatives or other people they're trying to join in the UK?
This is why we need true European cooperation and solidarity. Now, I wouldn't put all of the blame onto the UK or to Europe, but all of these countries need to work together to provide these people with a dignified welcome into Europe. If we want to continue speaking about Europe as a continent of human rights that respects the rights of asylum, then these countries need to drastically change their policies. And the UK, like France, needs to provide legal channels so that these people don't have to risk their lives in trying to cross borders.
Well, do the legal channels, do the rights of asylum seekers vary drastically from country to country in Europe? And are you suggesting then that they should try and all get on the same page then and treat everyone the same?
Absolutely. They should all get on the same page. They should open up channels from third countries, non-European countries, for these people who have links to come to Europe. They should. Right now, an Afghan that makes an asylum application in Germany will have much less chance of being accorded refugee status than, for instance, in France or in Sweden. You know, this is wrong. How can we speak about a common European policy of asylum if an individual of a certain nationality has a higher chance of being given refugee status in one country than in another country? And because of this, how can the Dublin regulation actually work in practice?
All right, well, thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis, Shoshana Vine from Sciences Po University here in Paris. That's